Have you ever been out somewhere, maybe, I don't know, the airport, and just seen someone walking around in actual pajamas? Like full-on pajamas and a hair bonnet.
Oh, absolutely. Or even just notice the language people use now.
Yes, exactly. Like in schools, or, even hearing politicians talk in ways that would have been unthinkable not that long ago.
It definitely makes you stop and ask, what's going on here? What shifted?
Right. Why do some of these social norms just feel like they're fading away?
Well, that's precisely what we're diving into today. It's based on this really thought-provoking piece by Dr. Michael J. Winfield Sr.
For one in Off the Cuff magazine. The Retreat of Civility and Impression Management.
That's the one. It tackles that exact question head on.
So the core question we're wrestling with, based on Winfield's article, is really what happened to this idea of impression management? How we present ourselves. And why does civility seem like it's declining?
It's a big question. It touches on how we act in public, how we interact, everything really.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to kind of peel back those layers.
Yeah, we want to trace this idea of impression management back a bit, see how it evolved.
And figure out what's driving these shifts we're seeing right now.
Exactly. And we'll be drawing on some of the sources Winfield uses, people like Goffman, Gorley, Ormerod, McLeod, Rivlin, quite a few thinkers involved.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Winfield grounds us in this term, impression management.
Right. It comes from sociology, famously from Irving Goffman.
And it's essentially about how we consciously or maybe unconsciously try to shape how other people see us.
Yeah, think of it like we're putting on a performance, depending on the audience, right? Whether you're at work or getting coffee.
Or even just walking down the street. It's this very human thing, wanting to fit in, project a certain image.
It's always been part of how societies function.
But what Winfield highlights, and this is fascinating, is the historical side. He talks about how, for generations, there was this strong code.
A code of ethical behavior, and managing your impression was part of that, taught everywhere.
He shares that quote, something like, "We may be poor, but we are the Johnsons."
And we will always conduct ourselves with dignity and honor. We may have nothing else, but we have our integrity. Yeah, that's power.
It really shows this deep sense of obligation, even when people had very little, to always, present themselves well.
Put their best foot forward, exactly. But Winfield's point is that recently, something's changed, leading to this decline in civility.
It's interesting, he draws a parallel to the Roaring '20s.
Yeah, suggesting we haven't seen such a big break from traditional norms since then.
You think about it, flappers smoking in public, which was radical.
The speakeasies, the jazz music, the mixing of groups that didn't typically mix publicly, huge shifts.
And now, Winfield points to things like swearing becoming common in schools, or politicians using language that feels raw, maybe.
And often without seeming to feel any shame about it.
It makes you wonder, okay, if this is another big cultural moment, what are the driving forces this time around?
So that leads us to the main drivers Winfield lays out. One huge one, maybe the most obvious, is social media and just digital life.
Right. He brings in Ormerod's work here.
Yes, talking about how platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they've completely reshaped how we interact.
And Winfield points out this irony, doesn't he?
He does. These tools are meant to connect us, but they might actually be disconnecting us from real-world social norms.
Because we're constantly curating this online version of ourselves, the highlight reel.
Exactly. It doesn't just create unrealistic expectations, it kind of erodes the practice of managing our impression in, messy, everyday reality. We're not practicing it the same way.
And tied into that digital world is the whole anonymity thing. The article mentions McLeod's research.
Highlighting how that online anonymity really fuels a lack of accountability.
It makes sense. People feel bolder saying things online, criticisms or opinions, without that immediate face-to-face consequence.
And we see the results, right? Increased online harassment, bullying, how quickly misinformation spreads.
Yeah. Winfield notes that without the face-to-face cues, the nonverbal stuff, you lose the things that normally guide respectful interaction.
which can lead to a much more hostile online space, more
Yeah.
polarized too.
Okay, so technology is one big piece. What else?
Another major factor is a shift in sort of broader societal values.
Away from the traditional emphasis on politeness and decorum.
Yeah. Historically, there was a strong community focus on respect, taught at home, reinforced in schools. Now, there's arguably much more emphasis on individualism,
On self-expression, even radical self-expression.
which is important. Personal freedom is vital. But Winfield suggests sometimes that focus can overshadow communal harmony.
Leading to maybe less consideration for other people's feelings or perspectives.
Potentially, yes. It subtly changes everything, from big political debates down to just how we talk to each other day to day.
And there's a third element the article brings in, related to economics, citing Rivlin.
Right. Economic pressures and social inequalities. These also play a significant role.
How so?
Well, when people are facing more financial stress, more competition, seeing that gap widen between rich and poor.
The focus shifts to personal survival or gain.
It can, yeah. It can manifest as more aggressive behavior, maybe less empathy, less attention paid to social etiquette or respecting elders, things like that.
Those background tensions can just make misunderstandings and conflicts worse.
Definitely. And what's really key here, and what Winfield stresses, is that these factors aren't separate.
They're all interconnected.
Exactly. It's this complex mix, the technology, the changing cultural values, the economic realities all interacting.
Creating this kind of perfect storm, almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A perfect storm that has reshaped impression management and consequently impacted civility.
Okay, so stepping back then, we've covered quite a bit.
We have.
We've basically seen three big drivers, all tangled together. Social media's impact, the shifts in values towards individualism, and those underlying economic stresses and inequalities.
And Dr. Winfield's core argument, pulling it all together, is pretty clear.
That while these changes brought opportunities, new ways to express ourselves,
They've also undeniably fueled this broader decline in civility we're observing.
but it's not all doom and gloom, is it? The article offers some sense of a path forward.
Thankfully, yes. Winfield really emphasizes the need to actively cultivate a culture of empathy and respect and accountability.
And critically, not just online, but everywhere, in all our interactions.
Which really puts the ball back in our court, doesn't it?
It does. And that leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over.
Given everything we've talked about today, the technology, the culture shifts, the economic pressures, what's maybe one concrete thing, one tangible step you could take in your own life?
Yeah, either online or offline, to help foster that culture of empathy and respect in your daily interactions. Something to think about.